Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, your number one global Caribbean and African online radio. This is your host, Dr. FM, Dr. Francis Munangi Mpindu, right here on Today's Africa. We're delighted that this is the day the Lord has made, and we want to rejoice and be glad in it. And we trust that you have subscribed. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that and share this channel with others. We go live every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We go live on YouTube, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and of course, StreamYard. And so we are live on over 100 different countries. And we're delighted that you made time to be with us. You're not going to be disappointed today. It's one of those great days, as usual, every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do bring you a live program, and we bring in a special guest. And today we are going to be talking about from a refugee to presidential candidate. This is a very special topic. And of course, as Africans and the rest of the world in Africa and globally or in the diaspora, as Africans, we have been concerned about what is happening in Sudan, and especially Southern Sudan or South Sudan. And today we are delighted to have someone who, according to the topic here, from refugee to presidential candidate. Now, these are the kind of people you don't generally and you don't necessarily run into on the street. No. And I feel so honored that I had the privilege of connecting with our guest for today, Mr. Bolga Deng, who is one of the presidential candidates for South Sudan in the upcoming elections. So this is a very special program. And I'm delighted that we are waiting on him. He was having just a wee bit of technical difficulty, but we hope that our chief engineer, Mr. TYB, will be able to reel him in so that we can have this conversation with him. And again, this is your host here, Dr. FM, on Love Bay Afrobeat Music Talk Radio on Today's Africa. And we are talking about a gentleman here who was born in a small village in Awale. At the age of 7, armed militias attacked and abducted hundreds of children, including him. He was taken to Western Sudan, enslaved and forced to work under brutal conditions as a little boy. And at the age of 11, he escaped, making the dangerous journey through Khartoum to Egypt, and finally in 1999 he resettled in Richmond, Virginia in the USA through the UN Refugee Program. We are going to have a special dialogue with this gentleman, and I feel so honored that he is going to be here to help us to understand what is happening in South Sudan. Many of us as Africans over the years have been very concerned about what has been happening in Africa, especially in South Sudan. And so to have a special guest like Mr. Deng here, it's a real treat. And so we trust that you will be able to log in, send in your questions and comments. And we are looking forward to having a great conversation with Mr. Bolga Deng this day. And he will be joining us from the US. And he tells us that over the years and having settled in the US, he was able to learn English, earned degrees in political science and homeland security. He has devoted his life to advocating for South Sudanese refugees and advocating for democracy. And he founded the Kush Democratic Majority Party with a bold vision, upholding the law, the rule of law, zero tolerance for corruption, women's leadership at the forefront, and the full engagement of the Sudanese in the diaspora and in South Sudan. So this is a special day. This is a special topic that we have today. And uh, we are waiting for Mr. Deng to join us in the studio today and allow us to have this conversation with him. So again, this is your host, Dr. FM, on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. And I see that Mr. Deng here was is he just showed up briefly, and I see that he is logging in, and he just logged on. Mr. Deng, we're delighted that you have joined us today, and thank you, sir, for making time to be with us. We know that you are a busy man, and there's a lot on your plate, but you have made time to be with us today. I was just informing our listeners and our viewers here that we count it a real privilege to have you in the studio with us. And I know that this topic here, from refugee to presidential candidate, is something that is not from a textbook. This is a lived experience, sir. And it's hard for me to imagine that as a little boy, you were part of those children who were abducted, enslaved, worked under brutal conditions. But by the grace of God, you were able to escape. And here you are. Now you are a presidential candidate. Now, I just said this. I know I'm not even doing justice to your story, but Mr. Deng, we're delighted that you've joined us today. Would you kindly let us know who is Mr. Bolga Deng?
Thank you, Dr. Francis, with having difficulty with technology, and I'm sorry for coming a little bit late, but I thank you so much for hosting me. And I want to thank your audience who are watching as well uh, for such of a time like this and having interest to host me. Yes, my name is Paul Deng indeed. I was born in Sudan, actually now divided to two countries, which is South and the North at this point. But I was born in the southern part, where the war very much been went on for a generation. I think the Sudan has the longest war in Africa, the longest war in the world, actually. So being born in the village, being taken to slavery for 3 years, and then I managed to escape, made my way to Egypt, to the United States, and being here as refugees. And thank God that I was able now to meet people like you and many others. Million and hundred and thousand died because they didn't see a way to escape. It's a brutal war that went on and took 2.5 million in the country. And that war is until today, Sudan is still at war. So I just want to thank you so much for having me.
The pleasure is ours, sir. We are looking forward to hearing your stories of pain, stories of joy, as we work through some issues in Africa. on the continent of Africa. And you are right. Sudan has been a country at war for a long time. And it pains the rest of us as Africans. And we wonder what is happening. I'm reminded of the words of Dr. Francis Kwame Nkrumah, who said, "What is the independence of Ghana if the rest of Africa is not independent?" And I guess in those words, he was looking at the whole of Africa, Sudan included. So whatever is happening in Sudan affects all of us. And today we're really privileged and we feel very, very humbled to have you in the studio with us here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio, the number one African Caribbean online station. Um, we have Mohammed Haitham, who says, "Much love. Nothing is impossible. It's all about the mindset." And Mohammed is absolutely right. Your story, sir, as we get into it, from refugee to presidential candidate, nothing is impossible. And again, we're so delighted that you made time to be with us today. So, life is so daily, sir. You wake up one day, one morning, you are attacked and abducted. Now, I know that this is a journey for you that has taken on different turns over the years. But would you take us back to that part of your life earlier on? Whatever you feel welcome to share with us at this point. But we are going to spend quite a bit of time on what then led you to this mindset, as Mohammed says, to being a presidential candidate. But in those early days, what went through your mind? What like give us a synopsis of that experience for you. It's hard for me to imagine that kind of an experience. I mean, that's traumatizing, sir. That is traumatizing. And yet here you are today. So share with us briefly, as you feel comfortable sharing, what was that for you? What did that mean? What were you wrestling with? I know it was about life and death, but just allow us to enter into your journey at that point.
Thank you, Dr. Francis, and your idea. Sudan, Sudan before actually, we become a part of South Sudan now. As you know, Sudan is been at war for the longest in Africa, and Sudan also was a country that the elite don't want it to be a part of the Africa continent. They don't want Sudan to be a part of the African Union, and the fight was to make the Sudan to be a part of the Arab League member membership. Uh, and the Sudan, about 85% are the indigenous African people, and the 15% elite who describe themselves as the Arab actually pledge their loyalty toward the Middle East. And they that they took over the power, Sudan got independent in 1956. That the one actually took the leadership, and that actually started pressing African indigenous for a long time, and that led to so many revolution in Sudan, South Sudan revolution in 1955. Before even Sudan got independent, was a revolution led by African indigenous. Then that war had again in 1972, and they signed a little bit peace. It didn't work, and then they went back to war again. And the elite, who are governmental elite in Sudan, who see themselves as Arab elite, they don't want to, identify themselves with Africa culture. They don't want to identify themselves with Africa continent. They don't want to identify themselves with Africa land. Even they live in African soil. They refuse not to acknowledge that they live in African soil. And the African indigenous realize that this is a threat not only for us, it's a threat to the region, it's a threat to the continent. And they took armed struggle. That's the only solution that they have. They must be forced by force because democratic doesn't work in Sudan. And the South Sudanese went on for more than 21 years war. That were actually, I was born in the village, part of South Sudan. I didn't know nothing about the war. I did not know about even Africa itself. Being born in the village, in African culture, we have three that we do in our lifetime: hunting, fishing, farming. Farming is a big culture, is part of our culture. Owning the cattle and animals, cow, that was a part of my culture. So I was raised to be a man that can hunt and man that can take my cattle and being a good man in my family and being a good dancer as well. I was cut off from the rest of the world. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have nothing called car or anything. We just live in our village because of the threat that we face a lot by the Sudan, the central government elite. Uh, Made the African indigenous to hide in the bushes. They never associate with the town. They never associate with the country. Neither even they don't want to see themselves to be part of any country. They want to isolate themselves because when they get attacked, their children have been taken, the animal have been taken, the goats and chicken have been taken by the raiders. So they realize the only thing the only way they can survive is to maintain their life in the bushes and find a way to live in the river Nile if there's any way they can be able to get water. And that has been my lifestyle. So when attackers come, they introduce me to different world that I never knew. World that people drive cars, world that people drive bikes, a world that people have electricity. So I got introduced to a different world that I have to speak also a different language. My attackers put me in school. I mean, I was not able to communicate with them, but I was taught in Arabic to speak in Arabic at the time. That is the first language that I learned. And I would say that I was the first person in my family to learn Arabic. And also, it was the only language that is spoken in Sudan as a special, I mean, very much a language that official, but that have no connection with the rest of African indigenous. It just was done only in the center, in the Khartoum, which is a capital city. So when I got to Khartoum, I have to learn that language. So to let you know that yes, being an African boy, you live a simple life, a style. Sometimes it's hard to find clothes. Sometimes it's hard to find shoes, which is okay with us. We're comfortable with it. It's okay sometimes also to live with a friendly being to animals, which is lion and other animals that we actually associate within the bush. But we learned that in Africa, in particular in South Sudan and Sudan, we animals become so friendly toward us than the fellow human beings who are attacking us and take away our wealth and our children and our women, and they disappear and nobody see them again. In fact, Sudan is a pro-slavery country. Most of you may not know this. Sudan is a pro-slavery, and the reason Sudan itself, the name itself is a slavery name. It means that the land of the black, but land that is not taken yet from the black people. But yes, it's the land of the slaves. That was the meaning of Sudan. If you guys don't speak Arabic, that name has been labeled is a label to the African indigenous, and that it become a big tragedy for the nation. Until this day, Sudan has been at war since Adam and Eve, and is still at war until this day. Until the African indigenous need to be recognized that they are a part of Sudan, and Sudan belongs to all of us. And Sudan actually it should be equal to everyone. That actually made South Sudan to break away to be a separate country now. That and Sudan from the west to the now to the southern region again in Sudan and also the east, they're still fighting because they want to be like African South Sudanese. Now we become an African. We become part of IGAD members in East Africa. We become a part of Africa Union. We realize that that's where we belong. We do not belong to Arab League, and we belong to the Africa Union. And that way, actually, now I'm running as a candidate for that country as a member of Africa Union.
Mr. Bolga, Deng, thank you very much for this information you're sharing with us. I think you are opening us to a world that some of us have never heard of, and I think um, I must say thank you very much for helping us to understand why what is happening now is very important in terms of the future, not just of South Sudan, but of Sudan as a country, and of course, two different countries now, and really for the rest of Africa. And I'm glad to hear you talk about the importance of being connected to the African Union. And so now, for you, uh, learning Arabic, um, and then coming to the US, learning English, and getting into political science and homeland security, and now an advocate for democracy, and now a presidential candidate. What was the turning point for you in terms of looking at your contribution as a politician, and not just as a politician, but saying, I would like to step into this important position of leading the country? How did
You
you
know,
come to that? How did you come to that?
well, thank you. I was an activist. First of all, I didn't, when I got to the United States, I didn't know how to speak English. I learned it here in this country called United States of America. When I came, actually, my mother tongue and then an Arabic language, which I speak Arabic and I write in Arabic as well. So I was dislocated from my origins, which is an African culture. I was no longer a part of African culture based in language that I cannot communicate with African community because my language is in Arabic. So there's no way that I can communicate with African and speak French and either speak English. The people that I can associate with those who are Arabic spoken. So I could be black, but I was not able to associate with anyone at the time. And so from that time, coming to the United States, also I have to start from zero, which is that I have to start from A, B, C, D again and rise up to become English speaker. From that point, I got to school and I became an active in the school as well. And I joined the Africa Union student, become a member of Africa Student Union in my school, where actually I find the sense of belonging at that time. The students that come to the United States, they were not, a lot of them, they were not refugees. A lot of them, they were coming through student visa from Ghana, Nigeria. I can go on and on and on, east to the west to the south. A lot of them come to the U.S. and they form the African Student Union, where actually I become a member of, and I become an activist in that organization. And then I start sharing my experience with them and the issues of Sudan. It was still one country at the time. Was 2000 to 2002, 2003, and I can go on and on and on. and Sudan is still one. And been sharing my story. A lot of them, they were shocked that Sudan still have slavery. They didn't know that. And I said, yeah, I'm a runaway slave. I'm here. Just a testimony to you to know that we still have a slavery in Sudan. And from that time, I actually cash out to talk to folks and get invited to speak for some churches, some organizations, and I speak. And also, I realize that I need to contribute to struggle in Sudan by being the voice of the voiceless, because I feel like I am very lucky enough to be in the United States. Rest of my fellow made they did not make it. A lot of them die. A lot of them got eaten by the animal, maybe lion. A lot of them didn't make it to the United States. So I see myself. I have a sense of responsibility to stand up and be the voice of the voiceless, because millions of Sudanese who are indigenous in Sudan do not know how to speak English. So I got to be blessed to share my story and share the story of the Sudanese who are still oppressed in the continent, and to share with them what I'm trying to do and help them to be the voice. That how actually from that kind of journey and that path led me to say, you know what, when we done that and South Sudan become independent, they vote and they become independent country, we realize that we have a job to do. And also the leaders that they were fighting the regime of Sudan, which, a lot of them, the general, the militant, uh, who very much have no background about the historical facts, and they don't know the leader that was actually was the lead of that revolution died in 2005, poisoning in helicopter crash. So people left with no information, and we realized that we need to catch up and share information about the real problem. And I decided to be the solution, not the problem. And I said, you know what, how can I be the solution? How can I be the solution for that country? And to step up and know that we are not also getting trapped into the same historical that we have a lot of children that may be led to slavery again. So I become the voice of the voiceless, and I decide to become a candidate because I realize that I have to be responsible, and I don't want to use what happened to me as to be a victimization. I want to use it to be responsible and use it for the advantage and make sure that what happened to me it could be a blessing in other way you look at it. Living in a village that you don't know the animal, you don't know that the world exists. You live in the village that you don't know that the Africa itself exists. You don't know that you have other world out there that you love your mom, your relative, your cousin, and a little bit your network within the village that you know. Now God turned you to know the world that your mother never knew. Your daddy never discovered, your grandfather never discovered. You discovered the world. You realize that, you know what, God, let me do this and let me be the change of that image, of that struggle, of that genocide, and be the peacemaker to bring the change for that country. That I decide to be the candidate and to be the solution, not the problem of that country, so-called South Sudan and Sudan as well, and Africa as well. Because I realize that I need to educate people that what happened to me should not happen to other African children.
Oh, thank you so much for allowing us to have this conversation with you, sir. I can only imagine the weight of this mission and calling on your life to, like you have said, to be a solution and not the problem, considering how that part of the world has been isolated intentionally so that it's cut off from the rest of Africa. And unfortunately, we live in a world that includes all of us human beings who have limitations. The Bible talks about sin. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And it's unfortunate that some of us have allowed that sin to become a part of who we are and lifestyle, and we take advantage of other people. But just to see God's grace and guidance and provisions in your life in allowing you to escape from such brutal conditions. Um, Now I can only imagine as well that you have threats, because I don't think everybody is happy to see the kinds of, I mean, the kind of passion that you are exuding and wanting to bring into Sudan, into South Sudan, so that people can experience freedom and enjoy what is happening there. Now, I know that over the years, different people have had opportunities to introduce change. Um, so, as you look at your own giftedness and the experiential knowledge that you have, what makes Mr. Bolga Deng a unique candidate? I know you're talking about wanting to bring changes, and in Africa, we know everybody says the same thing. Now, I'm not saying we are doubting your ability to do so, but I'm just saying when people are candidating, they tell us all the good things we want to hear, but once they get in power, sometimes, more often than the opposite. We end up recreating things that have made Africa difficult for us to be able to connect with the rest of Africa. So, what are the characteristics, or the unique characteristics that Mr. Bogai Deng brings to the table, looking into the upcoming elections?
Thank you, brother, Dr. Francis. You know, what I went through as a young boy, as a teenager, no any child could go through, and I went through it and I survived. And I have seen the suffering of the young women and children in Africa, in particular in South Sudan. Uh, and actually, I come from the culture that starvation in South Sudan is the biggest issue. No one have a solution how to stop the hunger in South Sudan. That's the biggest problem. And I stood when actually I was growing up, I used to tell my mom that I'd be able to do something about the starvation. And the starvation that I grew up in, and my mother grew up in, my grandfather grew up in, it go on and on and on is a non-stoppable in Sudan and South Sudan before it became South Sudan. And I've seen it and I lived it. Many South Sudanese, well, I'm talking to you right now, they go for 7 to 5 days, maybe even 10 days without having food in the table. That is number one that I always grew up trying to do something about. South Sudan is a land of agriculture. It can feed not only the South Sudanese, can feed the entire African continent by the land. And because of the lack of knowledge how to do this, I've been thinking about what to do about it. So the people of South Sudan, they cannot go starving for year after year. So that actually would distinguish me. If I could stop the starvation in South Sudan, it will distinguish me between those who are lead, talk to talk, and walk to walk. And also, if I be able to stop the insecurity, the war, internal wars, that a tribal war that now have become a big issue in South Sudan. You see, Dr. Francis, I live in a culture here in diaspora in the United States. We see ourselves sometimes as Americans. We see ourselves as African Americans in African diaspora. There's nothing called, Igbo or Zulu or Denka or all those kind of type of small thing that so-called tribal division. We're seeing things in the bigger picture. that if you're Africa, that should define you. Why would you go deep enough to say I'm from particularly this group and this group? What is killing South Sudan is right now is a grouping based on ethnic lines, killing themselves because they belong to this group, and this group go and actually chase away other groups, and the government is not doing anything about it. And the people are killing themselves. They are some Africans, they are some indigenous. You got to put the law and order in place to let them and also treat them equally and make sure that all of them are equal in the image of God, equal in the image of being an African, equal in the image being indigenous of that land. No one should be bigger than others and have to set up the law to be obeyed by these citizens. That is not happening in the country. The leadership allowed these tribal men to kill one another, to actually very much kidnap and do whatever. There's such a crime that they are doing in South Sudan. It become an ethnic war that if no one intervenes, we can see another Rwanda genocide in South Sudan. And that's something that I need to stop in my leadership. And the regime that we have is not doing that. Another thing that I want to do, Dr. Ponce, what will make me different than other leaders, I want to see the woman leadership in Africa, in South Sudan particularly. I want to see the woman lead. What happened, the issues that we're dealing in South Sudan and also in African part. Women are not a problem in Africa. The woman, African woman, has never been a problem of the continent. Always a man problem in Africa continent. In order for us to do that, we need to teach them and let them take the lead. If you see the example of Liberia in 2023, Liberia went through almost Sahara and war and genocide during the President Charles Taylor. When actually a lady left, a World Bank work employee, Helen Johnson, volunteered herself and went and declared a candidate to be the Liberia candidate. Liberia today is the most peaceful country in the West Africa. And that who set the tone of that country is a lady called Helen Johnson Sharp. And Liberia was able to elect the football player never dreamed to become a president one day, George Weah, to become the second Liberia president because it was elected by the Liberia people because they served and it delivered and actually loved his country. It became the second president, and now we have another president. Just to tell you, the women leadership of Africa can make difference. If we really teach these women and give them to lead our continent or any country in Africa, I think Africa will be the peaceful continent in the world. And I think my leadership is going to put and invest in the young girl and young woman to know that you can be a leader. Not only being an housewife, you can be a leader too. These are the things that I have in mind. And also, I want to eliminate corruption. Corruption is still a biggest problem in South Sudan. And I cannot tolerate corruption when the pure elite who are enrich themselves and the majority suffer. We want to deal with this elite to hold them accountable so the majority can actually benefit. Because when you have a country that go from the elite who are rich and the 90% are actually dying from starvation because it was a cause is a corruption, you got to do something about it. And I don't think anybody doing something about that in South Sudan. The elite are the one actually putting the country in a position where we are now, and the leadership is not doing anything about it. Corruption is rapidly in South Sudan. People are building houses abroad. People actually are taking their loved one to be treated in Germany and also in India, and I can name all of it. And the majority of South Sudan is are dying in the hand of malaria, who's supposed to be actually be treatable in Africa, in South Sudan. So these are unique programs that I will set them up, and also development in the country. I will work on that, and also education. Education is a priority because if you don't set up it in my platform, I want to make sure that education will be free to every child in South Sudan, from elementary to secondary, exactly we call it high school in the United States, to be free for the young people who their fathers and dads struggle in this nation called South Sudan, and they come back from war. They didn't have anything. And now is the time for us also to reward them by giving their children to have free education for them. That will be a good credit. Now in South Sudan, the leadership is not doing that. Leadership is shutting the young kids who their mother have no jobs, who their father have no jobs. And now they actually they're inviting where these even in school in South Sudan is not free. So it's the time for us to make education free in South Sudan. These are the things that I think that will make me unique than other African leaders, other South Sudanese leaders that have led the country. And another thing before I conclude this, you're absolutely right that we're people that talk nice talk and say we're gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, and sooner or later they're done anything. And I have seen that, and I met so many people who are doing the same. And I think that what actually made me to do what I do, I want to distinguish myself from those who talk. A friend of mine asked me the other day and said, why I always see the African leaders traveling, doing so many things, but when they go to the leadership, they never talk about creating jobs for their citizens, bringing investors to their citizens, bringing job and create and I say no. In the mindset of African leadership, particularly South Sudan, it's not that responsibility to create job for you. I want to be a leader by you on your own. You die, you live business. My business, I want to be president. And I don't care what I'm going to do, I'm going to become a president. I just want to go to the seat. If I sleep there, wherever I take vacation, that is my business. But to this point, I have no responsibility to find a job for you. And that's why today we have 95% South Sudan young men who are very much angry. They want to see, they want to work, they want to find job, and there's no job anywhere. And I want to make sure that I will create jobs, I will bring investors to have industrial country called South Sudan at this point. Because God gave me this kind of talent and knowledge and connection to make those kind of connections. And those are not my connections. Those are the people that actually I was born from connection. Without them, I wouldn't be here. And that's why it will make me unique than other African leaders. And I'm going to make sure that South Sudan and also the region it will have a chance. When I traveled, I went to Europe, Switzerland recently. I've seen European Union are doing a massively great job. They have their own employees across the Europe countries. If you from Netherlands, you get a job in Switzerland and also in Germany. They're doing that. That employees are not discriminated. If you go to Africa, if you travel to South Sudan, you travel to Uganda, you go to Nigeria, as a South Sudan, you will not find a job because even their own citizens they have no jobs. So I want to open up South Sudan that you are a citizen, wherever country in Africa, you will find a job there because you are belong to that continent.
Hmm. You are opening our eyes to see things from a totally different perspective, um, and we appreciate that. We are delighted that we are having this conversation with you. Again, to our viewers, those who just joined us, we are live here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio, your number one African and Caribbean online radio. And we are delighted to have Mr. Bolga Deng, who is the presidential candidate for the upcoming elections in South Sudan, a gentleman who has experienced life in ways that are difficult to articulate. And I can only imagine that the pain of going back to being abducted, being attacked by militiamen, being abducted, and being a slave child, and then escaping from that and having an opportunity to relocate to the U.S. And so this is today's Africa. We are talking about being solutions and not being a problem. And Mr. Bolga Deng here is helping us to understand that. So thank you again, sir, for being with us. Now you say that your mission is simple but powerful: to free South Sudan from fear and division, to build a future where justice, unity, and opportunity belong to all. You mentioned earlier about the value and significance of engaging women in leadership, and you're absolutely right. I was raised by a single mother, and uh, I am eternally grateful for the formal and informal education that was passed on from my mother. And you rightly mentioned Liberia, and now we have Namibia. And the importance of women in leadership is something that we as Africans need to embrace. And we are grateful that um, Rwanda, Rwanda has shown us as Africans that there's wisdom in being intentional about including women in leadership. Now, I know someone has said that diversity is a reality, but inclusion is a choice. And you are saying you want to choose to make sure that the women become part of this journey, this new journey for South Sudan. And I can't agree more, sir, that um, over the years, the involvement of women has actually been downplayed. And you are right. As Africans, from way back when, women have always had this important role in our society. But because of foreign influence, there has been all these changes that have really sidelined or marginalized them. And you're saying we should not be doing that. And you're absolutely right. Now, do you see specific leadership positions or ministries within your government for women, or do you value um, their education and skills, which would then be based on this? You can then be a leader of this ministry. I'm saying this because it's so easy to say we're going to include young people, we're going to include women, we're going to include men just by virtue of gender. But is that your approach, or are you looking at it from a different perspective?
I think that, yeah, I feel it'll be our approach to make sure that women have to be forefront of the leadership. I think they can campaign to be ahead of the state if they wish to do so. I think that is my intention, and also not only in South Sudan, we can encourage that across Africa as well. We have seen so many women now rising up in Africa, and we give them credit. Those nations who have already done what they're supposed to be done long time
By the
ago.
way, Mr. Deng, sorry for interrupting, Mr. Deng. It sounds like your volume is low, and I have it on max here. So I'm wondering if you could up it up the best possible, because I'm hearing you, but you sound rather low, and I'm just wondering if you could assist us with that.
Okay. Uh, Can you hear me now? Can you hear me back? Can you hear me
That
now?
sounds that sounds better. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good. I want to say that the woman should be given a chance to lead the country. They wish to run for presidential candidate. I think they should be having a chance to run as well as I'm running now, to exercise that leadership and that vision, what they're going to do for the country. That could be done in South Sudan, not only just being a minister or being in the courthouse. You can also be a president of the country as well. That exactly my passion, and I want to see that done in South Sudan, and I want to see that done in Africa as well. During my candidate, I've been supporting African women across the continent. I'm in contact with them, and I encourage them to step up because to save the continent because we've been very much corruption that have been caused in Africa. A lot of this corruption done by the men, not by the women. You're seeing the corruption going on in Africa. You're seeing mismanagement going on in Africa. You're seeing so-called victimization. We have been so, oh, we are victims. We have been enslaved, and our continent have been colonized. All that are saying by the men, a lot of them. You never seen women in Africa complain a lot. They do the work. We need to change that. Also, you got to understand this: that what happened to you being colonized as a continent, that it should not be also a reason not to succeed, not to get ahead. You got to find a way to get ahead. That using of victimization, it doesn't work anywhere. Imagine if you go to the Bible, Joseph was sold to slavery, rise in the Pharaoh to become the king in that palace. He did not use actually, and they said that what was meant for evil, God turned it for good. So what was meant for evil being after being colonized, God can turn it for good if we actually don't use the victimization, not to get ahead, not to do things because we have been enslaved. Someone like me, I would even say, no, I got kidnapped long ago in my country. Why should I go and try to save the life of those one time I was able to be kidnapped and sold to slavery? That is not the reason. We still want to do well because that could be the reason why I'm here. That's the reason why I was able to be the first person in my family to drive a car. That was the reason why I was able to be the first person to see Europe and travel every day. It could be the reason why maybe I have in contact with people like Dr. Francis. So those reasons it should not be a victim way to stop, not to get ahead and get things done. So that is the reason I believe if we do this and use what happened to us and use advantage for something for us to succeed, we can do it. But and because the women are not complaining a lot in Africa, I think that they should be the leaders of that continent at this point. And we need to admit the mistakes that we actually been wrong for quite a while. We've been wrong, and now we talk about colonialism, who was the reason why we become corrupt. Oh, colonialism was the reason why we actually Zulu and maybe other tribes are fighting one another. The reason because that's why the Dinka and Nuer and South Sudan are fighting is the reason because those reasons doesn't work at this time we are in the world of technology. I think we gotta find another reason to blame another man for our problem. I know we've been blaming European for a long, long, long time. Now we talk about neo-colonialism again. I don't think that is going to take us anywhere. The time that what we need to do is take responsibility and clean up our house. Our house, we need to clean it up as African, as the South Sudanese, we need to clean it up. And cleaning up your house, you got to be responsible to take the lead. And I don't think that we in the continent ever took the lead from now on because we actually back down by blaming other men for our problem, blaming the Europe. By the way, when I got to this country called the United States of America, I didn't have relatives. I didn't know anybody. I was given a little card called, you got accepted to go to the United States. United Nations actually make a coordination with some churches in America. You're going to hand up there. I don't know the language. The people that actually receive me, they don't look like my mother. They don't look like my dad. They don't look like anybody in my village. But they actually welcome me because I was a fellow human being. And because
Mm.
through that fellow human being, I was treated right. I'm not, and I'm an African, a strange young boy. They don't know what village I come from in Africa. They don't know what country I come from Africa. But they did it because I was a human being. Okay. So what I want to say is this. So now those community brought me back then. They didn't expect anything to pay them back. Nothing. They don't need nothing from me. They just want me to survive, want me to live, want me to think back one day because I realize now I am an African man. I realize now I am a South Sudanese man. I want to go back to do something positive for my fellow citizens. But back then they didn't have obligation to ask me for anything. The reason why I brought this one up It's just because, yes, we're blaming the world, but we are not cleaning up our asses. We are not doing security right, instability everywhere in Africa. People of Africa don't have organization now to help themselves and one another. And instead, the United Nations is still assisting our continent. And we are not even as African Union, we do not come up with program that we can have one attack in a humanitarian way. We don't have that yet. You're seeing now millions are dying in South Sudan because of starvation. There's no Africa country can step up and say, you know what, I have humanitarian for these people because they are fellow citizens of Africa continent. Where war in Sudan, there's no one is taking a lead to stop that war in Sudan, and millions are dying. We have crisis everywhere. So I believe that we have to raise a responsible leadership, and women should be the core of those leaders. And women are always concerned about the humanitarian, they're concerned about the humanity. The women will not do the revenge toward other fellow citizens. And I think the African women have to be given a chance. And my leadership is going to play a big role on that. Maybe in South Sudan, if I got elected, I'm going to make a case in African Union to make sure the African women deserve a leadership in the continent.
Mm. Mr. Paul, Mr. Bolga Deng, you are touching on live wires here, and rightly so. You know what? It has always amazed me. What are our other African leaders doing? I know there are lots of things happening behind the scenes. I don't claim to know everything and represent everybody in Africa, but there is a role that other African nations can play in supporting the kinds of things. If I may be this objective, not just yourself, but all the other candidates, to ensure that what is happening in Sudan, in South Sudan, is the kind of thing that we want to see happening to all humanity, that we want, as you have said, people have to relate to each other as human beings. And when we do that, I think there's something that emerges, because your success becomes our success. And I think that's all part of the Ubuntu the concept here, that you are because we are because you are, and we are in this together. And I can see that, sir, that you are you are a leader, you are a survivor, and you're speaking from a lived experience. And Mr. Earl Sorrell here says, Mr. Bolgai Deng speaks as a man who understands true leadership. Educate the youth, young adults, as a priority so that they will see the truth of unity and understand the economy, and being able to understand the signs of how not to be led, or to be a leader into becoming slaves of society. The children can help the parents to become strong and to stand and break free from the lack of knowledge, and develop a true sense of being, a true sense of worth. Um, he says, he loves your platform and what you're saying here. And indeed, uh, women are a strong, truly known to be great teachers um, across Africa and around the world. And so it is encouraging to hear this. And Mr. Sorrell actually he agrees, and he says, if people understand the goals of colonialism, we all would be able to rise and walk with our backs straight and head on to the levels that we would never look down in society, and that we are all equal. I mean, you are speaking the truth, and rightly so, because I like what I'm hearing, sir. You're saying Yes, we are here because of things that have happened in the past. But let's not continue to blame others. We need to lead by example. And you said we need to take responsibility and clean up our house. There is no excuse for continuing to do what we have been doing. Yes, we've been messed up, but we can't continue to blame that. What are we going to do to move forward so that we are different? And from what we are gathering here, you are saying you want to introduce a new leadership. You want to introduce a new way of doing things. You want to deal with tribal division, ethnic inequity. You want to introduce an intentional aspect of women in leadership. You want to deal with corruption. You want to make education a priority. You want to create opportunities for young people and older people to have this sense of worth in terms of their contribution to society, which reminds me, I think it was one of the US presidents who said, no, we should not be asking what can the country do for me, but what can I do for my country? And you're saying we need to take responsibility. We need to take responsibility. And from what you're sharing with us, it is encouraging to see this wave of hope. Now, I know you are familiar with some of the things that are happening in Burkina Faso, and we know that although there's excitement across Africa in terms of a new leadership mindset emerging, we also know that there are other people who are not happy with that. They would rather want to maintain the status quo so that they continue to benefit from it. And from what we're hearing from you, you're saying, no, we want to be solutions. This issue of starvation is happening right now in South Sudan, and it's very difficult to make use of the land effectively when there is war, because there's so much threat and intimidation, and it's difficult to plant. But I mean, planting and agriculture and all that takes time, and you have to have a sense of security to be able to weed and wait on the harvest so that you will be able to enjoy that. Now I'm looking at our time, and I realize that an hour goes by really fast, and we will definitely have you back, because what you have started sharing with us is something that we definitely want to continue uh, to hear from you in terms of progress, what is happening, and we know that elections are coming up. Now, in terms of what is in the making for the upcoming elections, what are some of your concerns, or do you have any concerns?
Yes, there are so many concerns. Thank you for having for that question. Thank you so much, Dr. Francis. There are so many concerns, and the concern is that the corrupt elite, who is the president now, do not want to put his opponent, who may win the election, to the ballot. He was trying to kind of ignore it, try not to put my name in the ballot. We've been pushing this through the African Union. We've been pushing this through the IGAD. We're pushing this through the international community, and to know that they need to acknowledge all the candidates to be in the ballot, but they try now to hide it and try to walk away with it. Reason they have put a lot price of money to be paid by opposition that want to run for candidate, $50,000 for you to register your party in the country, and no one can afford even $1 a meal in South Sudan to eat. But he was talking about $50,000. It's not even South Sudan, it's local money. He's talking about actually US money to register your party. You have to have 50,000 and other fees. Just tell you that they want to blackmail the capable leaders not to register, not even to be a part of the take part of the election. Is another way to scheme the election always. And this is the responsibility of all of us as African and all of us as the world and all of us as humanitarian concern in South Sudan, and to make sure that we need to find a way to push them to make sure all those kind of candidates who should be given a chance to contest, to be actually elected or maybe voted out by the people of South Sudan. He cannot decide the future of the election. Let people of South Sudan decide who they want to be their leader and who they want to stand him away. So I think he's afraid now to create so many problems, to create so many corruption. Now he's want to make it a family government. Now he's bringing his daughter side to be a part of the cabinet. He's bringing his own brother-in-law to be a part of the cabinet. He's bringing his own sisters and many others. So our government in South Sudan has become a family government. And that's why we go back that instead for us to blame the other man, we have the problem with the continent. We are the problem of those nations. And that's why we need to hold this kind of type of people who are part of our citizens, who are behaving the way this president of South Sudan is behaving now. I don't call him president because he never been elected. He was just told to walk away with the South Sudan, and then in 2011, and then he can call election for South Sudanese to elect a legitimate president. He is a transaction government. President is not elected president, but he stayed there for more than 20 years now. Is a time for him to allow every candidate to be a part of this kind of election, to take part of the election, and he still want to buy black man. But this is the problem that is concerning us, and we've been writing letters and to the world leaders, and we actually talking to the African Union. We may be in the United Nations General Assembly recently in New York. It's going to be UN General Assembly is taking place as well. We are talking to the world leaders that election in South Sudan must be mandatory, and we have election observers across the world and also in the African Union. They need to be a part of the election observers in South Sudan, so South Sudan can be free. At least these are the concerns we have.
Hmm. Thank you very much for enlightening us on this, Mr. Deng. I am aware that time has slipped away, and I certainly, like I said, we want to have you back so that we can continue some of the things that you mentioned in passing, and definitely you have a lot to offer and help us to understand what is happening. Now, I am going to ask you uh, a question that might put you in the hot seat, but take it for what it's worth and do your best to respond to it. One of the things that disappoints me about uh, politics, be it in Europe, in North America, in Africa, is that oftentimes, because we're so divided and we're thinking division, we don't see the good in the other. And I'm saying this because I would like to have you perhaps mention one thing in the current government in South Sudan. Is there one thing that is going well or could be better? And if you were to become president, you'll be able to build on that. Because even though we are different, I'm saying this because oftentimes, when we have different parties, be it in the US, the Democratic, the Democrats and the Republicans, and in Canada, we have, the conservatives, the independent, and all that. Oftentimes, we are on the attacking side, attacking, and rightly so,
Yeah.
because we need to call each other in, keep each other in line and call it when it needs to be called. But we can also say, listen, you guys just mentioned something that we were not thinking, and we appreciate that. Listen, we are going to work on that. We're going to do better at that. And so I'm just wondering if there's something that you would say, this is the progress that has been made. And if you were to come in as the president, you'll be able to build on that. Is there something that comes to mind with that?
Well, I think thank you so much, Dr. Francis. First of all, I want to say that what you mentioned about about the world. Can we get together? Can we actually get along, or maybe the thing that we may lack from other fellow men, fellow human being? I think there are good things out there. There are good things out there. And when I want to share this message to the our background, where we come from, the Africa continent, I always will blame different ways about our problem, and I think that you got to acknowledge also in the same ways that you blame there are good folks out there, people like family that brought me to America are part of those good folks, and there are so many good Americans out there who done a great thing for humanity, kindness, generosity, and you name it all. Because we're saying all this because you never visit America, you never lived there, you don't know who you met, you don't know the culture of those people. So we blame based on what we have been told in social media, TV, but in reality, when you come to the fact, you realize that there are good fellow human beings around the world where you go to. I went to United Kingdom, the same thing, and I want to tell you that there's so much we can talk about this. But when you live in Africa, raised and born there and grew up, and you don't know a lot about the world. So these are the things that we need to also explore as leaders to say, what do you know about this country you're talking about? And we have to have our own discussion table, and that could be done later. When it comes to South Sudan, the only thing that I can acknowledge when the South Sudan break away from the Sudan, he's the one actually led his people describe as a Joshua that led the country to independence, which is actually that because he refused not to be a South Sudan not to be a one country, which I think that it was a good idea because we never get along with these so-called they describe themselves Arab Sudanese. They are not African. They never acknowledge being an African. They are not proud of living in African land. But they totally say that we are Arab. We are here. We are here to stay. We are not going anywhere. We are here to oppress you. We are here to kill you. We are here to slave you. So when the South Sudanese realize that they cannot take it any longer, he was the one actually walk away with the South Sudan in 2011. Now we have independent called South Sudan. That could be the credit we can give it to him. But plus that he has a bad cabinet, he have a bad corrupt lead with him, people that are so bad in his cabinet. A lot of them are very, very corrupt, and they loot all the resources in his hand, basically. And plus also, I believe that he did not put education and structure in place. He never put road structure in place. He never put agriculture to be a priority. Use oil as a mean for development, which oil is not the only resources in the country. So I think he had a bad team around him, and also he's the one actually he did not allow the people of South Sudan to elect their leaders. He's the one appointing people, degrade them in, degrade
Yeah.
them out. That I think is wrong from him. Otherwise, walking away with South Sudan. Now we proud South Sudanese. We have our own flag. We have our own national basketball play all over the world, better known national basketball in Africa. We have our women basketball. We have a sense of pride being seen and the face of Africa continent, being the darkest continent in Africa, a country in Africa, being the tallest people in the world. These, they were hiding in Sudan at the time. No one want to show us we exist in Sudan. Now, after we got South Sudan, suddenly everybody's shocked where these tall people come from, where these darker the skin people come from. But it was hard in Sudan. Sudan have so much African talent inside Sudan have been oppressed. They cannot see the light. So after we walk away, and he's the one have to be given credit on that, now we become part South Sudanese, and I become the candidate of that country. So that is the credit I can give it to.
Mr. Bolga Deng, I wish you knew how thrilled I am to have you make such comments about someone you could be replacing, and seeing that we have come a long way. We need to build on what has been happening. And sir, I commend you for that. I agree with our brother here who says it's very easy for us to always focus on the negative, and I think by saying what you just said, you are getting you are preparing the people to be drawn into this fight to vote, because they know that you are not just there to say everything has not been happening, and nothing has been happening until I come on the scene. You're saying things have been happening, but you want to build on that. And this is Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio. I know that our time has slipped away, and what a privilege it is to have you. And just before we let you go, sir, I am wondering what would be your parting words. We will have you back, sir. That's not a threat; it's a promise. We will have you back because you are such a wealth of knowledge. And we definitely want to continue a conversation with you. But what would be your parting words to uh, our viewers today as we wind up today? Just think in terms of uh, other African countries, other African leaders, the people in over 100 different countries who are listening and watching this podcast. What would you like to leave with us and say? Yes, I've mentioned all kinds of things, but as I close, here are some things that I would like to leave with you. So share with us, sir.
Thank you. What I want to leave with everybody is be hopeful and be peaceful and be mindful and know that a problem that you go through can turn to be good instead of being bad. We learn from Joseph being a slave and rise in the palace in the Pharaoh in Egypt, and what was meant for evil got turned for good. I want to say to everybody out there that wherever you go through, you may go through, it's gonna be could turn a blessing for you as well. And be the solution, don't be the problem, and make impact to people around you. Be positive toward them. Be kind to them. Be generous to them. You never know that person that you create impact on him may go and change the life of others. So you can change the world you live around, the world around you, your family, your kids, your cousins, your relatives, your neighborhood. This is how you change the image of that environment and that society and that family. Be positive. Don't be the problem. Be the solution always. I know that so many, oh, these people are attacking me. No, you got to be the solution of that problem. Don't be the problem. And do not create the problem at all. Be the positive. When you are not around, people will remember you. He was a good man. He was a good woman. He done this to me. Tons of positive can be you could be remembered of. And I think that I think in Africa countries, all this blaming is not working. We've been blaming since 1960. It's a time for us to take responsibility and say, you know what, we can take charge of this. If Abraham Traore can actually, as a military general, come along and clean up and try to focus on development, and a man who knows how to use the gun now we actually spoken on development. Think about that. Think about that. If you can do the same thing as well and put the people first. People, we must learn how to put the people first. What we have learned in Africa, we never put the African people first. African people don't matter to us. They don't value nothing to us. It's the time for us to value them as the world values our citizens. And that's what the African Union and the African head of the state need to know. You are not there because of you are there because of those people. And you must value those people and put them first before yourself. And that's the servant I want to see. Leadership is a servant and his responsibility. It's not just about touch and killing and chasing everybody away and seeing other ethnic group that they don't belong to because they speak different language, Africa dialect. It doesn't mean that they are different from you, like your brothers and sisters. And we have to work. You want to work in the world peace that we want, African peace we want to make sure that we are part of the solution of the world, not to be the problem of the world that we're seeing the United Nations sending the peacekeepers to Africa to protect our own mothers and sisters from us, because we're the one creating the problem as an African leaders. So it's a time for us to take responsibility. So the UN and the international community knew that the African leaders are responsible. They are able to clean up their house And this is the message I can leave with you. And thank you.
Mr. Bolga, Deng, thank you so much for being with us today. The kinds of things that you have shared with us are really profound, and what a wonderful spirit you have displayed in terms of collaboration, wanting to work with others, and realizing that you are a man on a mission. God has given you this mission. He has protected you over the years to this day, and we can only wish you the best in your endeavors, in your plans for the future. And our prayers are with the people of South Sudan so that there would be peace and that they would realize their God given potentials as well. And I must hasten to mention that you are a transformational leader, sir. And just listening to you brings a breath of fresh air to our conversations, and you have enabled us to see things and hear things that some of us were not even aware of. And so, thank you for being a historian. Thank you for being an orator. Thank you for being a servant leader. And we feel so delighted to have had the privilege of hearing your story from a refugee to presidential candidate. And like I said, we definitely wish you all the best, and we will have you back. And like I said, this is a promise and not a threat. Again, to our viewers and listeners, thank you for being with us today. This has been your host, Dr. FM, here on Love Bay Afrobeat Music and Talk Radio, your number one global online radio. Thank you for being with us. We go live every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, and of course, StreamYard. And we are grateful for our executive team for creating this opportunity for us to have moments on Today's Africa to learn about what is happening in Africa. And again, thank you for joining us. Please take a moment to subscribe and like the channel and share with others so that we will meet again and keep on keeping on doing the right things. Be a voice for the voiceless, be a solution and not part of the problem. Again, thank you for joining us and for being with us. This is your host, Dr. FM, signing off.